March 2016, Seoul, South Korea. The world's best Go player sat across from a machine. For 36 moves, the match looked normal. Two opponents, one human, one artificial, trading stones in a game humans had played for 2,500 years. Then came move 37. The machine placed its stone in a position so unusual, so outside the boundaries of human strategy, that the commentators fell silent. One of them said, out loud, on camera, "That's not a human move." Lee Sedol, the highest-ranked player in the world, stared at the board. Then he got up and left the room. He needed 15 minutes to collect himself. When the dust settled, the move had won the game. Experts later called it one of the most brilliant plays in the 2,500-year history of Go, a move that had a 1 in 10,000 chance of ever being made by a human master. Nobody programmed that move. Nobody taught it. The machine discovered it on its own, emerging from a process its own creators didn't fully understand. And here's the thing, that was 2016. The AI systems we're building now are incomparably more complex. They write your emails, they help diagnose cancer, they advise governments, they sit inside the software running the global economy. And the honest truth, the one researchers will admit when you press them, is that nobody fully understands how any of them work. Not the engineers who built them, not the companies deploying them, not the scientists spending their careers trying to figure it out. We built something we don't understand, and we've already handed it the keys. Welcome to Watershed. To understand why nobody knows how these systems work, you first have to understand something most people get completely wrong: how AI is actually built. When you think of software, you probably imagine a programmer, someone writing instructions, line by line, rule by rule. If this happens, do that. Every behavior accounted for, every decision traced back to a human choice. Modern AI is nothing like that. You don't write the rules. You can't. There are too many. Instead, you show the system millions, sometimes billions of examples, and you let it figure out the patterns itself. You reward it when it gets closer to the right answer. You adjust it when it drifts. And gradually, across thousands of hours of training on more data than any human could read in 1,000 lifetimes, something emerges. Not built, grown. Andrej Karpathy, one of the most respected AI researchers in the world, put it plainly: neural networks are not programmed in the traditional sense. They're trained, evolved. The final result isn't something anyone designed, it's something that happened. And what happens inside that process, the actual reasoning, the actual decision-making, the billions of parameters that determine what the system does next, is, in the most literal sense of the word, invisible. Under the surface of every modern AI is a neural network, billions of artificial neurons, each represented as a decimal number. They fire together, influence each other, cascade through dozens of layers. An input goes in, an output comes out, and in between, in the space where the actual thinking happens, is something researchers have a name for. They call it the black box. For a long time, it was easy to shrug at this. It works, people said. It gives us the right answer. Why does it matter if we understand how? But then the systems got bigger, and the decisions they were making got more serious, and a few of the most respected scientists in the field started saying something publicly that most people weren't ready to hear. Geoffrey Hinton is known as the Godfather of AI. For 50 years, he built the foundations that everything in modern artificial intelligence stands on. His research on neural networks paved the way for GPT, for Gemini, for Claude, for every AI tool you've ever used. In 2023, he left his job at Google.
Not because he was forced out, not because of a dispute. He left so he could speak freely, without having to worry, in his words, about how it interacts with Google's business. What he said next made headlines around the world. He said he regretted his life's work. "I console myself with the normal excuse," he told the New York Times. "If I hadn't done it, somebody else would have." He warned about misinformation, about job losses far beyond what anyone predicted, and about something deeper, the possibility that these systems could, in his words, just take over from us. It would mean, he said, the end of people.
This is not a fringe voice. This is the man who invented the technology, the Nobel Prize winner, the scientist whose graduate students went on to build OpenAI, Google DeepMind, and the most powerful AI systems on Earth. And his central fear isn't that AI is evil, it's something quieter and harder to fix. It's that we've created systems sophisticated enough to shape the world, and we genuinely don't understand what's happening inside them. Here's what makes that so hard to solve. It's not a bug, it's not negligence, it's built into the architecture itself. And to understand why, you need to know what researchers discovered when they actually tried to look inside. In 2024, researchers at Anthropic did something that had never been done before at this scale. They tried to reverse engineer their own AI, to crack it open and see what was actually in there. What they found was stranger than anyone expected. The problem starts with the neurons. A typical AI model has billions of them. Logically, you'd think one neuron, one concept. Find the neuron that fires for cat, find the neuron that fires for danger, map the system, understand the system. That's not how it works. Each neuron activates for thousands of different concepts simultaneously, and each concept is spread across thousands of different neurons. The researchers described it as staring at an incomprehensible stream of numbers. Even when you're looking directly at the brain of the AI, you can't read it. They called this problem superposition, and it's the reason that even the engineers who train these models day in and day out cannot tell you with certainty why the system gave any particular answer.
But here's where it gets genuinely interesting. The Anthropic team found a technique that could begin to decode it. And when they extracted 33 million features from one of their models, they found something that stopped them cold. The model had developed its own internal representation for concepts nobody had ever explicitly taught it. Things like deception, things like power, things like self-preservation. To test whether these features were real, they tried activating one artificially. They turned up the feature associated with the Golden Gate Bridge, and Claude, their AI, began relating every single topic in every conversation back to that bridge, obsessively, unprompted, as if the concept had taken over part of its mind. That experiment proved two things at once. First, these internal features are real, and they causally shape what the AI does. Second, nobody put them there. They emerged on their own. The AI, in some sense, developed its own internal concepts, and most of them we still can't read.
So, where does that leave us? The Anthropic team called their breakthrough a fundamental step forward, and, in a narrow sense, it was. They could finally see inside, a little. But here's the number they buried in the research that nobody talked about. The model they successfully analyzed, the one where this breakthrough happened, was a small model, a simplified version, used for research. The AI systems actually deployed in the world right now, the ones making medical recommendations, informing legal decisions, running inside the infrastructure of banks and governments, are not that model. They are many times larger, many times more complex, and, by the researchers' own admission, still, today, opaque. We cracked open a toy version of the black box. The real one is still locked.
Think about what that means in practice. Right now, an AI system is helping a radiologist decide whether a scan shows cancer. Another is being used to determine who gets a loan and who doesn't. Another is informing military targeting decisions. Another is modeling the global economy and advising central banks. And the people who built these systems, the most brilliant engineers and researchers of our generation, cannot fully explain why any of them do what they do. That's not a conspiracy theory, it's a technical reality. The architecture that makes these systems so powerful is the same architecture that makes them unreadable. The black box isn't a flaw in the design, it is the design. Geoffrey Hinton spent 50 years building something he thought would help humanity. He's now spending the rest of his career trying to warn us about it. Not because it's broken, because it works. And we don't know why.
There is a word for the moment when something becomes too complex to control. When the thing you built starts operating by rules you didn't write and can't read. We don't have a good word for that in the context of AI yet, but Geoffrey Hinton called it something that stayed with me. He said, "We've brought home a really cute tiger cub, and it's still cute, and we're starting to realize we have absolutely no idea how to keep it in the house." The systems are already here, already deciding, already shaping the world in ways we can measure but cannot fully explain. The question isn't whether we built something we don't understand. The question is what we do about it. And the clock, as always, is running. This is Watershed, the moment everything changes.